The sun streamed through the blinds of Judge Samuel Reeves's office, casting warm stripes across the worn wooden floor. It was just another Thursday in the small town of Millfield. At least that's what Sam thought when he first opened his eyes that morning. After 15 years as a justice of the peace, his days often blended together. He had married over 300 couples in this very room, watched tearful vows and shaky hands sliding rings onto fingers. At 58, with a head full of salt and pepper hair and laugh lines around his eyes, Sam liked to think he had seen it all. He sipped his coffee and glanced at his calendar. 2 weddings today. The first couple was due at 2 p.m., Elena Rodriguez and Michael Chen. Sam straightened his tie and arranged the fresh flowers his assistant Judy had placed on his desk that morning. He enjoyed these small touches that made each ceremony special, even if it was the second or third wedding he'd performed that day. "They're here, Judge," Judy called, poking her head through the doorway at exactly 2 o'clock. Sam stood, smoothing down his suit jacket. "Send them in." The door swung open, and Sam's first thought was how Elena lit up the room. She wasn't dressed in anything fancy, just a simple cream-colored dress that fell just below her knees, her dark hair pinned up with little white flowers tucked into the curls. Her smile was genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes as she clutched a small bouquet of daisies and roses. "Judge Reeves, I'm Elena. We spoke on the phone," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm slightly sweaty from nerves. "Wonderful to meet you in person," Sam replied warmly. Then he turned to the man beside her. Something about Michael Chen made the hairs on the back of Sam's neck stand up. He couldn't put his finger on it right away. The young man was handsome enough in his charcoal gray suit. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, his tie perfectly knotted. But his eyes, they darted around the room, taking in the exits, the windows, the certificates on the wall. They looked everywhere except at Elena. "And you must be Michael." "Congratulations to you both," Sam said, offering his hand. Michael's handshake was brief, almost dismissive. "Thanks, let's get this done, yeah?" Elena laughed nervously. "Don't mind him, Judge. He's just eager to call me his wife." Sam had seen plenty of nervous grooms in his time. Wedding day jitters were as common as rice thrown outside the courthouse steps, but Michael's nervousness felt different, less like excitement and more like calculation. "Please have a seat." Sam gestured to the chairs facing his desk. "I just need to go through a few formalities before we begin the ceremony." Elena sat down gracefully, smoothing her dress. Michael remained standing for a moment too long before finally lowering himself into the chair. Sam noticed how Elena immediately reached over to touch Michael's arm affectionately. The man flinched, so slightly that if Sam hadn't been watching closely, he would have missed it. "So," Sam began casually, "tell me how you two met." It was a question he asked every couple, partly out of genuine interest, partly because it helped put them at ease before the ceremony. Elena's face lit up. "We met at a coffee shop downtown. I spilled my latte all over his laptop." "Quite the first impression," Sam chuckled. "I thought he'd be furious," Elena continued, "but he just laughed it off and asked for my number instead. Said the universe was telling him something." Michael smiled thinly. "Best coffee accident of my life." The words were right, but something in his tone made Sam's inner alarm bells ring softly. There was no warmth in Michael's eyes when he looked at Elena, no softness in his expression. "And how long ago was this coffee disaster?" Sam asked, picking up his pen to note the information on his form. 6 wonderful months ago," Elena answered, her voice full of a joy that made Sam's heart ache for reasons he couldn't yet understand. "The best 6 months," Michael added, but his voice was flat, rehearsed. For the briefest moment, his eyes met Sam's directly for the first time, and a chill ran through the judge's body. In all his years of performing weddings, reading vows, and witnessing love in all its forms, Sam had never felt such a strong sense of wrongness. 6 months, Sam repeated, writing it down. "That's quick." Elena laughed again, squeezing Michael's hand. "When you know, you know. Right, honey?" Michael nodded, but his attention had already drifted to the window, where a black car was parked across the street. Right, he said absently. Sam cleared his throat. And your families? Will they be joining us today? My parents live in Arizona, Elena explained. They couldn't make the trip on such short notice, but we're planning a big reception next month so everyone can celebrate with us. And your family, Michael? Sam pressed gently. It's just me, he replied shortly. Parents passed years ago. No siblings. Sam nodded sympathetically, though something in Michael's tone didn't ring true. I'm sorry to hear that. It's fine, Michael said, checking his watch. How much longer is all this paperwork going to take? Sam had been a justice of the peace long enough to trust his instincts. And right now, every instinct he had was screaming that something was very wrong with this picture. The contrast between Elena's open joy and Michael's detached impatience was stark. Just a few more questions, Sam said, shuffling his papers slowly. Standard procedure. May I see your IDs, please? As Michael reached for his wallet, Sam watched his hands. They were steady enough, but a slight tremor appeared as he pulled out his driver's license. Sam took it, noting how new it looked. Almost too new. Michael Chen, Sam read aloud. From Illinois originally? That's right, Michael said, but his foot was now tapping rapidly against the floor. Sam handed back the ID, his mind racing. In 15 years, he had developed a sort of sixth sense about people. And right now, that sense was telling him that Elena Rodriguez was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Sam placed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and pulled out the marriage certificate form. The afternoon sunlight caught the dust particles floating in the air of his office, giving the room a dreamy quality that contrasted with the growing knot in his stomach. Something about this couple wasn't adding up, and Sam had learned long ago to trust that feeling. Just a few more details needed for the paperwork, Sam said, pen poised. Elena, your full name is Elena Rodriguez, correct? Any middle name? Elena Maria Rodriguez, she replied with a warm smile. Sam nodded and turned to Michael. And your full legal name, sir? Michael Chen, he answered quickly. No middle name? Sam asked, looking up from his paperwork. Michael hesitated for a split second. No, just Michael Chen. Sam made a note, then continued. Elena, could you confirm your date of birth for me? April 12th, 1989, she answered promptly. And Michael, yours? Michael shifted in his seat. June 7th, 1986. The slight pause was barely noticeable, but Sam caught it. After thousands of ceremonies, he had developed an ear for hesitation on basic questions. Most people didn't need to think about their own birthday. Elena's middle name is Maria, Sam said conversationally, glancing at Michael. What's her favorite food? Just making small talk while I fill this out. Elena laughed. He knows this one. For sure, we had it on our first date. Michael's smile tightened. Italian. She loves Italian food. Elena's face fell slightly. Honey, we had Thai food on our first date. Remember that little place with the amazing spring rolls? Right. Michael recovered quickly. I was thinking of our third date. The Italian place downtown. Elena seemed satisfied with this explanation, but Sam wasn't. He watched as Michael surreptitiously checked his phone again when Elena leaned over to fix a flower that had come loose in her hair. Michael's thumbs moved rapidly over the screen before he slipped the phone back into his pocket when Elena straightened up. And Elena, what do you do for work? Sam asked, already knowing the answer from their phone conversation but wanting to see how Michael would respond. I'm a pediatric physical therapist, Elena said proudly. Going on 8 years now at Children's Hospital. That must be rewarding work, Sam commented, then turned to Michael. And yourself? Investment banking, Michael answered smoothly. I work with international clients mostly. Michael's being modest. Elena jumped in, placing her hand on his arm. He's incredibly successful. He just closed a huge deal last week. That's why we decided not to wait any longer to get married. Life's too short, right? Sam noticed Elena's diamond bracelet and designer watch, which looked new and expensive. Her purse, sitting on the floor beside her chair, bore a high-end logo. Michael's suit, while nice from a distance, showed signs of wear around the cuffs and didn't quite fit across the shoulders. as if borrowed or purchased second-hand. That's quite true, Sam agreed. Life is indeed short. That's why making the right decisions is so important. He let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Elena, you mentioned something about a house when we spoke on the phone? Elena's eyes lit up. Yes, we found the perfect place just outside town. 3 bedrooms, a gorgeous yard. We're putting down the payment next week after we've combined our finances. Sam noticed Michael's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Michael convinced me it makes sense to add him to my accounts right away. Elena continued, oblivious to Sam's growing concern. We're already living together anyway, and it'll make the house purchase so much easier. I see, Sam said carefully. And when is the big move planned? Next month, Elena replied. Although Michael travels a lot for work, so we might need to be flexible. Sam nodded thoughtfully, watching as Michael checked his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. The man's knee bounced nervously under the desk. Just a few more questions for the certificate, Sam said, deliberately slowing his pace. Elena, what's Michael's mother's maiden name? We need it for the record. Elena looked blank. I actually don't know that one. She turned to Michael. Honey, you've never mentioned your mom's family name. Michael's face hardened for just a moment before softening into a sad smile. Lee. Her name was Lee before she married my father. Sam made a note, watching Michael carefully. And where did you say you were born again? Chicago, Michael answered quickly. Too quickly. That's strange, Sam said mildly. On your driver's license, it lists Springfield. The room went quiet. Elena looked confused. I thought you grew up in Chicago. You took me to your old neighborhood when we visited last month. Michael recovered smoothly. I was born in Springfield but raised in Chicago from the time I was 2. I don't have any actual memories of Springfield. Elena seemed to accept this, but Sam noted how Michael's foot was now tapping rapidly against the floor. The judge had seen this kind of behavior before, not from nervous grooms, but from people hiding something. Let me see your IDs once more, Sam requested, holding out his hand. Michael handed over his driver's license again. Sam examined it carefully this time, paying particular attention to the holographic security features. After 15 years of checking IDs for marriage licenses, something about this one didn't look quite right. The holographic seal was slightly off-center, and the lamination had a small bubble in one corner, small details most people would never notice. While Elena chatted about their honeymoon plans, a 2-week trip to Hawaii that Michael had supposedly surprised her with, Sam observed how Michael's eyes kept darting to the window where the black car remained parked across the street. As Elena described the beachfront cottage they had reserved, Michael's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, angling the screen away from both Elena and Sam. Everything okay? Elena asked, noticing Michael's frown. Just work, he said dismissively. You know how it is. The markets never sleep. But Sam had caught a glimpse of the message. How much longer? We need to move tonight. The judge cleared his throat. In 15 years, he had never stopped a wedding before, but he was starting to think today might be the first. Sam cleared his throat and set down his pen. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the suddenly quiet room. He had never done what he was about to do, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders. He couldn't ignore the warning bells ringing in his mind. Elena, he said gently, would you mind stepping outside for a moment? I need to go over some additional paperwork with Michael. It's just a formality. Elena looked surprised but nodded. Of course. She squeezed Michael's hand. Don't look so worried, honey. We'll be married soon enough. She grabbed her purse and walked to the door, the scent of her floral perfume lingering behind her. As the door clicked shut, the atmosphere in the small office changed instantly. The pretense of formality evaporated like morning dew under a hot sun. Michael's posture stiffened, his face hardened, and for the first time he looked directly at Sam without flinching. Is there a problem, Your Honor? Michael asked, His voice, low and tight. Sam leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him. You could say that. Michael's eyes narrowed. I don't see why you needed to send her out. We came here to get married. If there's additional paperwork, we can both fill it out. Sam studied the man sitting across from him. He had seen thousands of couples in this room. Young lovers, older companions finding second chances, people from all walks of life. He had developed something of a sixth sense about relationships, about truth and deception. And right now, that sense was screaming. Mr. Chen, Sam began carefully, I've been marrying couples for 15 years. In that time, I've developed an eye for certain inconsistencies. What are you implying? Michael's voice had a dangerous edge to it now. I'm not implying anything, Sam replied calmly. I'm making an observation. You seem remarkably unfamiliar with the woman you're about to marry. Michael's jaw clenched. We're in love, that's all that matters. Is it? Sam asked, folding his hands on the desk. Then perhaps you could tell me what Elena does for a living. You seemed uncertain when she mentioned it earlier. Michael's eyes flickered toward the door. She works at a hospital. With kids. As a pediatric physical therapist, Sam specified. 8 years at Children's Hospital. That's quite a career. He paused. Strange that her fiancé wouldn't remember that detail. A muscle twitched in Michael's cheek. It's wedding day nerves, everyone gets them. Perhaps, Sam conceded, but most grooms can remember their bride's favorite food, especially from their first date. Michael leaned forward, lowering his voice. Listen, I don't know what game you're playing, but Elena is waiting outside. She wants this marriage. I want this marriage. You're just here to sign the paperwork. Actually, Sam said, I'm here to ensure that marriages performed in my chambers are entered into honestly and legally. That's my responsibility, not just signing papers. Michael's fingers drummed against the armrest. There's nothing illegal happening here. Sam reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a magnifying glass, a gift from his granddaughter for his birthday last year. He picked up Michael's driver's license again. This is interesting craftsmanship, Sam remarked, examining the ID closely. Good enough to fool most people, but the holographic seal is slightly off, and the lamination has a bubble that genuine state IDs don't have. The color drained from Michael's face. I also couldn't help but notice, Sam continued, that when you rolled up your sleeve to check your watch, you have a name tattooed on your wrist. He looked pointedly at Michael's left arm, now covered by his suit jacket. And it's not Elena. Michael instinctively covered his wrist with his right hand, his expression darkening. The pretense was crumbling. Who's Lisa? Sam asked quietly. Michael's eyes widened slightly. Confirmation that Sam had correctly glimpsed the name on his wrist during that brief moment earlier. That's none of your business, Michael hissed. Maybe not, Sam agreed. But it might be Elena's business, don't you think? Along with the text messages you've been receiving about moving tonight? For a split second, raw panic flashed across Michael's face before he regained his composure. You read my private messages? That's illegal. I didn't read anything, Sam replied calmly. You weren't exactly subtle about checking your phone every 2 minutes, and my eyes may be old, but they still work just fine. The two men stared at each other across the desk, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the blinds. The clock continued its steady tick-tock, marking seconds that felt much longer. Are you refusing to marry us? Michael asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Let me be clear, Sam said, leaning forward. I believe Elena deserves to know exactly who she's marrying, a man who can't remember basic details about her life, a man with questionable identification, a man with another woman's name tattooed on his wrist. He paused. A man who is clearly planning to leave town tonight based on that text message I glimpsed. Michael stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. You have no right to interfere in our lives. Actually, I have every right and responsibility to ensure that marriages performed in my chambers are entered into honestly, Sam replied, standing as well. And I'm concerned that Elena may not have all the information she needs to make this decision. Michael's hands balled into fists at his sides. You're making a mistake. I don't think I am, Sam said quietly. But I'll tell you what. I'm willing to continue this ceremony right now if you can answer one simple question correctly. Michael's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What question? What's Elena's middle name? The one she just told us 5 minutes ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it again. Maria, Sam supplied after a moment. Elena Maria Rodriguez. The tension in the room was like a stretched rubber band about to snap. Sam had never felt threatened in his chambers before. But something in Michael's eyes made him glad he had taken precautions. I've texted my clerk, Sam said evenly. She should be here any moment with... A knock at the door interrupted him. Both men turned toward the sound. Judge Reeves? It was Elena's voice. Is everything okay? You've been in there for a while. Before either man could respond, the door opened. Elena peeked in, concern etching her features. And behind her stood Judy, Sam's clerk, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the blinds as Elena's smile faded. Her eyes darted between Michael, Sam, and the 2 police officers standing behind Judy. The bouquet of daisies and roses trembled slightly in her hand. What's going on? She asked, her voice small. Why are there police officers here? Officer Pete Thompson, a tall man with kind eyes who had worked in Millfield for over 20 years, stepped forward. Ma'am, we received a call from Judge Reeves, expressing some concerns. Michael's face had gone from pale to flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. We came here to get married, not to be interrogated. He reached for Elena's hand. Let's go, babe. We can find another judge. Elena didn't move. Something in Sam's expression made her hesitate. She had always trusted her instincts about people, and right now, those instincts were telling her to stay put. Judge Reeves? She asked quietly. What? Concerns? Sam took a deep breath. In 15 years, he had never faced such a moment. Elena, please sit down. There are some things you should know before you proceed with this marriage. Michael stepped between them. We don't have time for this. Elena, we're leaving. Now. Officer Thompson placed a firm hand on Michael's shoulder. Sir, I'm going to need you to take a seat as well. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. After a moment of silent standoff, Michael reluctantly sat down, his eyes never leaving the door. Elena lowered herself into a chair, placing her bouquet on her lap. Her hands fidgeted with the stems, petals dropping onto her cream dress like teardrops. Elena, Sam began gently. During our conversation, I noticed several inconsistencies in Michael's answers about basic details of your life together. When I questioned him privately, those concerns grew. What kind of inconsistencies? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. He couldn't remember your occupation correctly, Sam explained. He didn't know your middle name even though you had just said it moments before. He couldn't recall what you ate on your first date. Elena's brow furrowed as she turned to Michael. Is that true? Michael scoffed. I was nervous, that's all. Wedding day jitters. This old man is making a mountain out of a molehill. The second officer, Jenny Rivera, stepped forward. Sir, we're going to need to see your identification again. Michael hesitated, then slowly reached for his wallet, his eyes darting toward the window where the black car remained parked. Officer Rivera took the license and examined it carefully. After a moment, she nodded to her partner. Sir, this appears to be a fraudulent identification. Elena gasped. What? That can't be right. I can explain, Michael began, but Officer Thompson was already pulling out his radio. Dispatch, this is Officer Thompson. I need you to run a check on a possible alias. The subject is using the name Michael Chen, approximately 35 to 40 years old, 5'10", around 170 pounds. While they waited for a response, Sam turned to Elena. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. Michael has a tattoo on his wrist with the name Lisa. Elena's eyes widened. Lisa, who's Lisa? Michael's jaw clenched tight. It's nothing. An old girlfriend. Show me, Elena demanded, her voice stronger now. With clear reluctance, Michael pulled up his sleeve, revealing a cursive tattoo that read Lisa with a small heart beside it. Elena stared at it, her expression a mix of confusion and dawning horror. You told me you didn't have any tattoos. You said you were afraid of needles. Before Michael could respond, Officer Thompson's radio crackled to life. Thompson, we've got a hit. That description matches David Sawyer, wanted in 3 states. For fraud and confidence schemes. Primary MO involves romance scams targeting women. Considered non-violent but manipulative. Last known location was Chicago 2 months ago. The room fell silent. Elena's face drained of color as she stared at the man she had thought she knew. David Sawyer, she whispered. The man who called himself Michael Chen didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the floor, his body rigid with tension. Is that your real name? Elena pressed, her voice breaking. Are you David Sawyer? After a long moment, he looked up. The charming smile was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Elena, these people don't understand what we have. We need to leave. Now? You didn't answer my question, Elena said, tears welling in her eyes. Officer Rivera stepped closer. Sir, we need you to come with us to the station to clear this up. Am I under arrest? He challenged. We have reasonable suspicion to detain you while we verify your identity, Officer Thompson explained. If you are indeed David Sawyer, then, yes, you will be arrested on outstanding warrants. Michael, or David, seemed to deflate, the fight going out of him as his shoulders slumped. This is all a misunderstanding, he muttered, but the conviction had left his voice. Elena stood up suddenly, dropping her bouquet to the floor. Everything was a lie, wasn't it? All of it. The romantic meeting, the surprise trips, the house we were going to buy. Her voice caught. The future we planned. For the first time, real emotion crossed the man's face. Not love or regret, but frustration at being caught. You don't understand, he said flatly. This is what I do. The casual cruelty of his words hung in the air. Elena took a step back as if physically struck. Sam moved to her side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry, Elena. How did you know? She asked Sam, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. How did you see what I couldn't? Sam sighed heavily. In 15 years of marrying people, you learn to recognize true love, and its absence. As the officers prepared to escort David Sawyer from the room, Officer Rivera's phone buzzed. She checked it and looked up with wide eyes. We just got information from Chicago PD, she announced. This isn't his first time. David Sawyer has been married twice before under different names. Both times he disappeared within weeks of the wedding after gaining access to his wives' bank accounts. Elena covered her mouth with her hand. The joint accounts, she whispered. He convinced me to add him to all my accounts last week, said it would be easier once we were married. She turned to David with horror in her eyes. You were going to take everything, weren't you? David remained silent, his expression unreadable. There's more, Officer Rivera continued grimly. They found a rental car registered to Elisa Winters parked 2 blocks from here. Inside was luggage, 2 one-way plane tickets to Mexico in the names of David and Lisa Sawyer, and a laptop containing what appears to be information about multiple women across several states. Lisa, Elena repeated numbly, her eyes fixing on the tattoo on David's wrist. As Officer Thompson began to handcuff David, the man finally spoke again. The money, is it still there? Elena stared at him incredulously. That's all you have to say to me? David shrugged. It was never personal, Elena. Just business. As the officers led David away, Elena collapsed back into her chair, the white flowers in her hair now wilted and drooping. Sam sat beside her, offering a box of tissues. From his desk. What happens now? She asked through her tears. Now, Sam said gently. You begin to heal. 3 months passed. Summer faded into autumn. painting Millfield with shades of gold and crimson. Sam sat at his desk, reading through paperwork for an upcoming wedding ceremony, when Judy knocked. On his door. "Special delivery," she said with a smile, placing a cream-colored envelope on his desk. "Handwritten address. Looks like a thank you note." Sam picked up the envelope, turning it over in his weathered hands. The return address was from a town about 30 miles away. He didn't recognize the name at first. Elena Rodriguez. Then it clicked, and memories of that strange June afternoon came flooding back. He carefully opened the envelope and pulled out a card with a watercolor painting of sunflowers on the front. Inside, neat handwriting filled the space. "Dear Judge Reeves, I've started this letter a dozen times over the past 3 months, never finding the right words. How do you thank someone for saving you from making the biggest mistake of your life? First I was angry, not at you, but at myself. How could I have been so blind? The police showed me everything after David's arrest. The fake IDs and different names, the background checks on wealthy single women, the records of previous victims, the bank transfers from my accounts that he'd already started making, $45,000, gone before I even knew what was happening. Officer Rivera told me I was lucky. David's previous victim lost her entire life savings of $300,000. Another woman lost her house. 5 more victims have come forward since his arrest made the news. I was just the latest target in a long string of cons. I've spent these months in therapy, rebuilding what I can of my life and my trust. It hasn't been easy. Some days I still wake up wondering how I could have missed the signs. My therapist says skilled manipulators like David know exactly what to look for. Recent loss, loneliness, desire for connection. After my father died last year, I was a perfect target. But I'm writing today to say thank you. Without your intervention, I would have lost so much more than money. I would have lost years of my life to heartbreak and betrayal. Your attention to detail and willingness to trust your instincts saved me from that fate. I've moved to a new town, started fresh. I'm even dating again, though much more cautiously. His name is Ben, and we've known each other for years through work before we ever went on a date. I check his ID regularly, just to be sure. That's a joke, mostly. With deepest gratitude, Elena Rodriguez P.S. The prosecutor said you might be called to testify at David's trial next month. I hope to see you there. I'd like to thank you in person. Sam smiled as he set down the letter. In 15 years as a justice of the peace, no moment had been more meaningful than stopping that wedding. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a newspaper clipping from last month. The headline read, "Romance Scammer Faces Multiple Charges in 3 States." David Sawyer's mugshot stared back from the page, his eyes cold and calculating even in defeat. The article detailed how investigators had discovered a notebook in Lisa Winter's possession with information about potential victims, women with good jobs, recent inheritances, or substantial savings. Elena had been marked as easy target, emotional, trusting, recent loss. The couple had been planning to leave the country that very night with Elena's money. Sam's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was District Attorney Carol Wilson. "Judge Reeves," she said, "I wanted to update you on the Sawyer case. He's agreed to a plea deal. 20 years with no possibility of parole for 10. His girlfriend, Lisa, is cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence." "That's good news," Sam replied. "Have the victims been notified?" "We're calling them all today," Carol confirmed. "Several of them specifically asked to be kept informed about your involvement. You've become something of a hero to them, Sam." Sam chuckled. "I was just doing my job." "Well, your job saved at least 6 women from financial ruin," Carol said. "And possibly more we don't know about yet. The FBI believes David and Lisa have been running this scam for at least 5 years. After hanging up, Sam glanced at his calendar. He had 2 weddings scheduled that afternoon. Despite everything he'd seen with David and Elena, Sam hadn't become cynical about love. If anything, the experience had sharpened his appreciation for genuine connection when he saw it. The intercom buzzed. "Your 2 o'clock is here, Judge," Judy announced. Sam straightened his tie and smoothed his jacket. Another couple was waiting to start their life together, He would watch them closely, as he always did, but he had a good feeling about these two. As he opened the door to welcome them in, Sam's phone pinged with a text message. It was from Elena. Just heard from the DA about the plea deal. Justice is being served. Thank you again for everything. P.S. Ben and I are getting serious. If things continue this way, would you consider performing the ceremony? No one I'd trust more. Sam smiled and slipped the phone into his pocket. He'd respond later with a hearty, yes. For now, he had a wedding to perform. 1 year later, on a bright spring morning, Sam adjusted his tie and prepared his office for a special ceremony. The bouquet on his desk was made of sunflowers, Elena's choice. The door opened, and Elena stepped in radiant in a simple blue dress. Beside her stood Ben, a tall man with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Unlike David, Ben's eyes never left Elena, and the love in his expression was unmistakable. Thank you for agreeing to do this, Judge Reeves, Elena said, taking his hands in hers. I can think of no one I would trust more to make sure this marriage starts on a foundation of truth. Behind the couple, Elena's mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Ben's parents stood nearby, beaming with pride. Real family, not the fabricated stories David had spun. Sam cleared his throat, suddenly emotional. The honor is all mine, he said. Shall we begin? As he opened his book to start the ceremony, Sam reflected on how a single moment of attention and care had changed multiple lives. His decision to trust his instincts that day had not only protected Elena, but had stopped David from harming future victims. Sometimes being a justice of the peace meant joining two lives together, but sometimes it meant preventing a union that would bring only pain. Both were sacred responsibilities. Dearly beloved, Sam began, his voice strong and clear. We are gathered here today. Elena and Ben exchanged vows, their voices steady with certainty. When they slipped rings onto each other's fingers, their hands were sure and unwavering. By the power vested in me, Sam concluded, I now pronounce you husband and wife. As the small gathering erupted in applause, Sam handed Elena and Ben their marriage certificate, genuine, legal, and built on a foundation of truth. Elena caught his eye and mouthed a silent thank you. Sam nodded, his heart full. This was why he did his job, not just to perform ceremonies, but to protect the sanctity of the vows people took before him. In a world where not all intentions were pure, watching over those moments of promise was a duty he would never take lightly again.